Welcome to the Fearlessly Inspired podcast. We are two military veterans ready to lead, empower, and inspire women in all areas of life. We are proof that your past doesn't have to define you and your circumstances don't have to hold you back. We are your hosts, Courtney and Barbara. Welcome to the show. Welcome back, listeners. We are so excited to have you back with us today. And if this is your first time, welcome to the show. Today, we're going to take a moment to get to know your host, Barbara, as she tells us a little bit about herself and she provides some great advice and insight. So this week, diving into other podcasts outside of our own, and they have been firing us up. We are currently doing a 30-day podcast challenge where we're starting to share every day to our community. Barbara, who has been your favorite podcast so far?
So I'm seriously not going to lie when I say this, but I've listened to, just today, I've listened to Trent Shelton, like maybe 4 of his podcasts. And then of course, my girl, Celine Bacardi, she's been talking about like just how, in the past we have prayed or wanted something, whether it was 5 or 10 years ago. And today we're sitting in that spot, and just to be grateful for where we've come, because it's a process. And so it's just, all the podcasts that I've listened to all this week, they've been just lighting it up in their podcasts. It's been setting my soul on fire. And today I just put that fire like out into our community, and people were getting lit up all day. So,
girl, you put it out there. I was like, dang.
Oh man, what about you, Courtney? Who's your favorite so far?
So I've been listening to a few of them, but when I think we shared Trent Shelton today, like it was definitely him. Like I think today was like maybe day 6, and I actually saw him in person last year in Dallas, and he was fire then. And then yesterday I caught his Facebook live, because he goes like hiking or running through the woods up in Dallas, and then he always does like this inspirational live afterwards. And so when I caught it live yesterday, I was like, man, he's like speaking directly to me. And then today, so we shared, it made me think of him today, and that's why I shared the podcast with you. And girl, like I thought he was like speaking directly to Courtney. Like he's like, Courtney, listen to me, girl, listen up. And so I was like, geez, I'm like, okay, I'm listening. I'm listening,
shared
Trent.
2 of his podcasts today. Like just the topic alone, like I just forward like.
Like, and it just I feel like sometimes like people, like you remember you're called to something, and so you pick it up again. Like this a couple days ago I picked up this book that I really really like, and as soon as I opened to the page, which I was like on chapter 2, I was rereading it for the second time. And chapter 2, I felt like was exactly what I needed to hear that day. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's been happening to me a lot lately. And so when I don't normally listen to Trent, he comes live all the time. And so when I hit that button yesterday, I was like, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, universe.
And it's funny because, I think with any podcast or motivational speakers, you see them passing through all the time, right? And mm-hmm. You're like, okay, I'll go back and listen to it. But I think because we've been doing this 30-day challenge where it's intentional to really grow and listen to other podcasts, I think it's really like those podcasts we need have been like really fueling, kind of our mm-hmm. and driving us.
Definitely. So let's get started. Let's get started into the questions today. And so to break the ice, I know you and I have spoken about this before, but I'm sure you get this question all the time. So how in the world did you come up with your website called I Sparkle Glitter?
Well, I really do get this question a lot, and it's kind of a long story, but I'm going to, make it a little shorter for you. So when I first started coaching, I needed a team name. We were asked to break off into our own groups. And so I needed a team name, and I came up with a few somethings, but nothing ever mm-hmm. really kind of seemed like it was going to flow for a long period of time or into different areas, like, of my life. And so, mm-hmm. There was, one day I couldn't really, nothing was resonating with me. So one day I just thought about what was my big goal, and it was to really have my own interior design company. And and so I asked myself, what would I call my interior design company? And I wanted it to be something that was significant and that really meant something to me. And so at the time, my IG handle was Mama Glitter Sparkles. And I knew that I couldn't name my interior design company Mama Glitter Sparkles.
That would be weird.
So, but it was that name for my IG handle was really inspired because it was the first movie that I ever took my two daughters to. And there's a character in there that's called Lady Glitter Sparkles. And so I went with Mama Glitter Sparkles because we're always messing with glitter and sparkles and glue and all that stuff. And so one day when me and my kids were playing with some glitter, we were being crafty, and sparkles were flying. It hit me, and I wanted to name my interior design company after my daughters. And so I came up with the name of Inspired Living with I Sparkle Glitter. I didn't want to put their actual names, so I used their initials to create the I Sparkle Glitter. And in the name I Sparkle, it has a little I for my youngest daughter. Her first initial is an I. And then glitter, I used a capital G for my oldest daughter because her name starts with a G. And so ever since then, I've just really created and readjusted my focus to just drive towards that end goal. I put it on my vision board. Everything has just centered around, and all my actions have really driven since there. And, it's kind of my dream to have an interior design company to kind of run with my two daughters and, let them inspire me from now until then.
And isn't it true that people sometimes think that you look like a famous celebrity that is an interior designer?
Yes, this is true.
And if you don't know what Barbara looks like, they say she looks like Joanna Gaines.
This is true. But I will tell you, Joanna Gaines is one of my favorites. And my husband, for Mother's Day, actually got me all of her books and started my subscription to her Magnolia magazine. I was so super excited.
She was. She sent me a picture of it. And she's like, oh my God, you need to go get this right now.
Disregard all the flowers that you get and the chocolates. It's the good stuff.
Right. You got to get inspirational stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So I like that. So let's just move on to the next question. So do you have a favorite failure?
Well, I wouldn't say up until this year I had a favorite failure because I really have never really thought of a failure as a good thing, but obviously your mindset kind of changes now. But I would say that in hindsight, my favorite failure right now is failing at homeschooling my children. Late last year, my kids got really sick when I started them in school. They spent a month out of 3 months totally in school. And so, and they were only scheduled 3 days a week, which was really crazy. And so after that whole shenanigans happened and I pulled them back out of school, I just thought, well, maybe it's best if I just homeschool my kids. So at some point in my mind, I felt, if I just set, a schedule with them and hours with them and made some fun stuff to do with them, that it would work. Little did I know that COVID would come along and really make me homeschool my kids because we never knew when they were really going to get ready to go to school, and my daughter was going to PPK. So I really started to invest some time in homeschooling. But I was trying to homeschool my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old. We had lessons planned galore that never worked. It was like my oldest daughter, she loves to learn. And the other one, she could give two rats about anything you're trying to teach her. And she only wants to know when she wants to know it. And so I really just started to get frustrated, to be honest. And the frustration just led me to really doing homeschooling my oldest daughter when the little one was taking naps. And then I just felt like, I don't know, I kind of felt like it was a failure because now I was really only trying to focus on one kid learning versus the both of them. And so when the schools actually opened back up, I was like, they definitely have to go to school because they weren't getting what they needed from me. You know, even though I desired to homeschool them, I definitely was not up for it. And like, you know, really the patience behind it. So,
You know, and I think that you are not alone in this boat. I think a lot of people have similar feelings to you. You know, they think, okay, I'm home already. I can do this. I can juggle both things. But I think it's hard for kids because they're used to being at home and doing a certain thing and acting a certain way. And now you're trying to put this like extra routine and kind of maybe a different type of discipline. And they're like, whoa, this isn't normal, mom.
right,
Like, pump your
right.
brakes. So, so no, I can see why you're gonna why you got frustrated, but you know, I think this has been a season where a lot of people are learning a lot of stuff about themselves, especially during these times of quarantine and uncertainty and not knowing what the next month may even look like for
Yeah.
us.
I mean, before we put them in school, my husband, he asked me, he's like, how do you feel? You know, with all this going on. And, you know, thankfully, we exposed our daughters to other people wearing masks because all the teachers now are wearing masks. And it's just a
Hmm.
different normal. And so when, you know, when we took the girls to school, you know, we did a little, you know, pre-gaming, obviously, and took them by so they knew where they were going. But, you know, just from day one, it didn't bother them to see people with masks and they just walked in, okay, mom, see you later. You know, they put their hand sanitizer on and they, you know, went on about their business. So it's just, I'm very grateful that they've taken it so well. But, you know, this is what they knew before they went to school is everybody's wearing a mask and, you know, we have to be careful with germs and, you know, wash your hands. And so, you know, it kind of prepared them before even going to school, I guess.
Right. And, kids are pretty adaptive once you're outside of
Oh,
that
yeah.
comfort zone of
Yeah,
home. So,
absolutely.
I'm glad that they're happy. So,
Yeah.
cool. So, let's move on to the next question. So, what are 1 to 3 books that have greatly influenced your life?
So I would say, hands down, the first book that always comes to mind is really the Bible. Regardless of how many times, you know, I go back to it, I learn something new. It gives me a different perspective. When I come across a verse that I've really already read, or maybe I've highlighted it, um, it makes me realize that the Bible isn't just a bandage in the moment. You know, it's really healing for my life, and you know, just that's what you know the greater part of it. And, you know, it's funny because as we were talking earlier, and you were like, you know, you read this book twice, but this time you feel like chapter two is speaking to your soul. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying is, you know, sometimes, you know, the first time we read something, we pull something else out of there. And then
Like,
go ahead.
you weren't prepared to receive it at that moment, kind
Absolutely.
of
Or,
thing.
you know, at your
Yeah.
time, whatever you're going through at that given time, maybe that what you read in that particular chapter had nothing to do to influence how you felt, your emotions, you know, or your
Mm-hmm.
decisions. And so, you know, I feel like with the Bible, you're constantly seeing verses and verses after verses. And so, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but they come at different times. And I remember, you know, a period of time when I was going through infertility. You know, it was a constant verse that stood out all the time was just be still. Like I'm telling you, like
Mm-hmm.
it got to a point that I posted it on my wall because it was just something everywhere I went, everywhere I turned, I kept hearing, you know, that particular just be still. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just learned to be still and trust that, you know, if it was going to happen, it was going to happen.
And it did.
And it did twice.
And it did twice.
So,
uh, but and it's weird that obviously in the last few months, things have kind of changed for me too. And I think I told you the other day, like, a lot of the stuff that I preach and I talk and, I put out to the world, unknowingly, it all comes from where? The
Right.
Bible. You know what I mean? Like those quotes are coming from there. And, I'm not a religious person by any means, but I am a faithful person. So, um, I think that I've put boundaries around certain things, and so now is an opportunity to kind of like open my mind up to more of these teachings and understandings. And so um,
But now,
I know you're always, I know you're always there, and you're always saying it, but
when you're ready to receive, you will receive.
right. Right. So, and that's the moral of the story here,
Yes.
guys. So, Um, so what is the book or books you have given most as a gift and why?
Let's see. The book, the book that I've given away the most is called Hannah's Hope. This book was given to me in the midst of probably some of the darkest days and of my life, and it was really during my infertility journey of trying to become a mom. And so, it took me and my husband 9.5 years to have our first daughter. And if you don't know, the story of Hannah in the Bible, you should really read about her. But this book, Hannah's Hope, it talks about suffering and heartache and anxiety. And, she really focuses on loss of grief because of the desire to be a mom. And so it was really designed to help, somebody process grief. And if you're someone that's suffering from infertility or even a miscarriage, or, people don't think of it, but even adoption loss, that happens. And a lot of parents grieve over that. And so um, the book really, just kind of has been one of those things that, I've had a lot of friends who suffer infertility or miscarriage, or, and
Mm-hmm.
I have sent that book to countless, you know, amount of people just because like it's one that's really touched home for me. And so it's just, I think, yeah, I think that's probably my number one.
And, obviously I've been, part of this, journey, for many years with you. And I hope one day, we can, maybe share a little bit more about your journey because I know, I think when you have friends that are going through infertility, you start seeing how many people are really struggling and, it's sad. So I'm sure you have been a blessing in disguise to so many people, even just by sharing that book with them.
I'll be honest, before I really, obviously our journey started earlier, but it wasn't until probably the last year and a half, 2 years of that journey that I really started to recognize who I was being surrounded by that was going through that journey. And I remember there was three of us that we were going through this heartache at the same time. And it was so weird because one of them got pregnant and didn't want to tell the other two of us because, we were all going through this. And then when she finally told me, I knew that I was pregnant, but I didn't want to tell her yet because I hadn't told anyone else yet. It was still my first
Mm-hmm.
trimester. And then I ended up, telling my friend, our other friend, and she was actually
Mm-hmm.
pregnant and she didn't want to tell us because she hadn't told her husband or, her family yet. So,
Mm-hmm.
but all of this happened within like 6 months of time. So we all have like back
Mm-hmm.
to back kids, like within 1 to 2 months to each other. And then, of course, you connected me to our friend Jamie during this time. And we've just blossomed. Our friendship has just, really blossomed from there. So, it's so
Yes,
weird
yes.
to see who you get surrounded by when you need them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I've told you this, a number of times, just like the verses that come, the verses or the quotes or, um, whatever that's been happening, it all's coming when you're ready to receive it and when you need it the most.
Absolutely.
So,
Agreed. 100%.
okay, so business talk, career talk, entrepreneurship talk. What advice should they ignore? Like, is there some kind of advice that you've heard through your career that people should ignore?
You know, I this is probably, the top thing that comes to my mind is that when people say you're too old to do da da da, whatever that might be, um, I'm telling you right now that I'm proof that age doesn't matter. I mean, I didn't really get on fire until I was 40 years old with two kids. And so it wasn't really until I was 40 that I realized what my dreams were and what I've been wanting and, longing for. And so, I've really zoned in, obviously, since I've had my two daughters, because raising two girls, I want them to grow up passionate throughout their entire life. I don't want them to wait until they're 40 to really feel that way. But, for those people who are older, and, wanting to start something new and exciting, age is nothing but a number. And so don't let anyone tell you that, oh, you can't go to school, you're so old, or, I didn't get my degree until I was 34 or 35, So, I got my PMP certification when I was 36. So I've done most of my stuff, later in life. And so, even having kids, if somebody tells you you're too old to have kids, I had my first kid at 36. So it's just for me, I think that, you know, that's one of the biggest things I see because obviously, I have a lot of older friends and they just, limit their beliefs and really don't focus on what they could do. They're just, they already have this in their mind that they're too old to do these things, or now they want to, just relax and do this or do that. And so, which there's nothing wrong with that if you've done everything else already. But if you have dreams,
And
be
I
passionate about
think
them.
And I think this is because, like when you're growing up or, you're graduating high school, for example, like, you know what I mean? Like you have all these ideas. Okay, this is what I want my life to look like, right? So, you become an adult, graduate high school, you maybe go to college, and a lot of people are like are getting married younger, are, well, from our age group, got married younger, they had babies
Right.
younger. And so, I think like they have this idea of what their life should look like by a certain time. And so either it ends up looking like that and they've accomplished those things, but those things aren't really, they're maybe not aspirational. You know what I mean? Like this is how I see my life looking. Like this is how many kids I look like I have. This is how many dogs I have. This is what my house looks like. This is where I want to settle down. And so all that happens. And then, okay, life happens. And then we kind of are like, oh, now we're getting close to 30, 40. And you
I'm
start,
done.
maybe
I don't have anything else
I'm
to do.
dead. It's like, I don't have anything else to do. And so I think that's kind of like that's kind of what's happened to us, like mid 30s, you're almost 40 or you just turned 40. Like now we're like, okay, I've got all this or I've done all this, mine's looks a little different than yours, but, but now is like, okay, now it's time to put me first and like my dreams and my goals and my aspirations. Like everything else is kind of set, or I've already done some of those
Right.
things. Like, hey, done that, been there, done that. Now what else? Or, and I think those that are kind of in this weird position, like of age and thinking that age
Right.
matters and that they're too old for something. Like to me, like I just spent 20 years in the military, like where somebody controlled everything that I did, like you can't go here, like you can't go there, like you can only drive this many miles. Oh, you have to tell me when you get there. You know what I mean? So when I think about now that I feel like those chains have been broken free, not that I don't love my career, I loved being in the military. And I might have stayed if it was a little different, but that's another story. but now like people are like, okay, what do I do? I'm too old. And for me, I'm like, girl, my life has just begun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like there's so many things that I haven't been able to do, but now it's time for me to do them. And so I feel like if you're listening to this and you feel like you're too old for whatever fill in the blank that you want to fill in the blank with, like we're here to tell you, like your best days are ahead of
Yeah.
you. Like your best years are ahead of you. Your best memories have yet to come. And so if there's something you've always wanted to do or you've always wanted to go or whatever, like don't give an excuse as don't give your age as an excuse as to why you can't do it because
Right.
you're just making excuse. It's a straight up
Right.
excuse.
I agree.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
um,
See, I told you these
let me
podcasts are
get.
getting us on fire.
I know. Like I just need to like go on on social media and just like light it up like you lit it up today. So what is one piece of advice that you would give someone in your profession or any profession in that matter?
Well, I think it goes hand in hand, with what we were just talking about. And it's one, don't limit yourself, period. But the other thing I would say is don't limit yourself to how you see others do something. I'm a
Yes.
very multi-passionate person. Anybody who knows me knows this. I got 10,000 things going on, and I just do things very different than most people. I'm very
That makes two of us.
so, but my thing is, I really love to create and I love helping others, to create. And so one of the things I probably love the most is when I see, a friend or a loved one figure out that moment when they know their purpose or they figured out their purpose or they created a way to create their own dreams their way. And so, when I see leaders or, you know, when I see leaders in an organization or a business, right? They press others to do it the same way that they've been doing it, or they have this tunnel vision and they can't see anything else. Like they don't understand sometimes that you can be doing two things verse one. You could be doing 10 things verse one. And so, um, you know, if you, it really disturbs me to be honest when I see it because it limits, because when you have leaders who try to put limits on you, just like, you were just saying, you being in the military, it limited you from being and doing the things you really wanted to do in life. But that's where you worked. That's the culture, that's the nature
Mm-hmm.
of the business. So when you see that in other companies, civilian side, you're like, well, why are you doing that? Like, there's so many opportunities, be innovative, do all these things. And so, um, my thing is, if you talk to any of these great leaders out here, I mean, if you talk to John Maxwell for 10 seconds, he's done so many things. He's been creative, but he's figured out a way for him to thrive. And he has found out a way to stand out amongst others. And in today's world, you have to. You and I were on common ground, right? We're on the same mission. We want to empower, we want to lead people, we want to inspire them. But we have different ways that we've gotten here. And we continue to do it our different way because you're not me and I'm not you. But we do support and empower each other, which is so critical because it just shows that, I feel like we're stronger because of that. You have some very significant attributes about you where I have other things about me, but we utilize each of those things to help each other
Mm-hmm.
thrive. And that's really, what we should be doing in any organization, whether it's
Right.
entrepreneurship, whether it's, a corporate business, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of the best things that I've learned are from my soldiers, when I was in the military. You're always learning from somebody else. You can't limit that.
And I think in most like organizations, the military being one of them, and some organizations that are like brick and mortar that have done the same thing the same way. And I think there's a ton of leaders that are going to be, and I don't know how many times I've heard it that says, well, this is how we've always done it.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, just because this is how you always done it and it's worked doesn't mean that we can't be innovative, think outside the box, and find a better way to do it that's going to affect more lives, save time, just, bring something different to the table. And so
Absolutely.
I have heard that so many times. Well, duh, like this is how we've always done it. Like, okay, but that doesn't mean that we have to keep doing it
Right.
this way.
And it
Like
doesn't mean
that's,
it's the
some of
best
those
way.
companies,
Yeah.
right, some of those companies have been doing the same thing the same way for
Mhm.
years, and it might be holding them back. Maybe one good innovative idea and one good leader coming in and kind of switching things up a little bit could make you $1 million,
Right.
could change your whole life. You know what I mean? This is like obviously for like, I guess it could be for anybody, but I'm just kind of over exaggerating it a little bit. But you know what I mean? So yeah. So
Fire.
since you mentioned, ugh, we're on fire tonight. So, since you mentioned the military and you are a veteran, is there any advice that you would give someone like me who just recently got out, or somebody that's about to get out of the military?
So let's be honest. I give you all kinds of advice every day, whether you listen or not. I don't know. But honestly, my first advice, and it's kind of a in hindsight, right? It's get your education
Mm-hmm.
before you get out. And for those people that are still in, really try to engage in things that you're passionate about. Because, when I got out, I didn't have a plan. I knew that I was going to go to school because I had the GI Bill. And I did do that. I got my bachelor's degree, but I didn't have really a backup plan or an idea of what I wanted to do for a job. And, um, it's funny because I can't be any more literal when I say it, but I literally stumbled upon my job. I still remember the day I was walking, through this building and I was in shorts, flip-flops, and a ponytail. And this guy asked me, what are you doing? What are you looking for? Because I must have looked lost. And I said, oh, I'm looking for, this department or whatever. And he's like, oh, I'll help you, whatever. He's like, are you a veteran? And I'm like, yeah, I'm still in, but I'm getting out soon. He's like, oh, are you interested in a job? And I literally looked at myself and I'm like, I'm not wearing Daisy Dukes or anything, just in shorts and flip flops, so it wasn't like being any certain way. But in that moment, I went through 2 interviews, and by the time I came home, I already had a job, and like
Like that
I
day,
wasn't even out of the military. So
like you talked to two people that
yeah, I
day.
talked to the chief and the assistant chief of this department, and it was in HR. And if you recall, right before I got out, while I was waiting to be med boarded,
Mm-hmm.
I was in the S1 shop doing HR stuff. And so,
Right.
obviously it's one of those things like, man, it really lined me up, right? Because I was
Mm-hmm.
qualified for this job or whatever. But nevertheless, I know that you and I have really talked about this, and it's, there's so many different opportunities out there. And, you started focusing on some of those different passions before you got out. And it has really set you up for success. And you're able to kind of know where you want to go and what you want to do. And so, if you don't have a plan and you're about to get out tomorrow, right? Obviously, if you haven't gotten your education, focus on your education, because
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things out there that once you do have your education, that it can just help you, kind of flow or maybe find your way into the next step or whatever. And so the other thing that I would say is volunteer. If you're not sure what you want to do, do an internship, volunteer. Hopefully, if you've saved up a little bit of money to be able to do certain things like that, but don't just jump into something because it's something. really do
Mm-hmm.
some soul searching, because you just spent, how many ever years, like you said, with, handcuffs on, or, with shackles and, all this stuff. And so now you're set free, like soul search, and really soul search and find things that you're passionate about. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you just did 20 years and it was a miserable 20 years, why would you want to go do another miserable 20 years somewhere else?
Amen.
And so it's really just finding what you're passionate about and doing that and driving with that. And maybe one of
Mm-hmm.
those internships or one of those volunteer jobs is something that leads to something more.
It's funny that you say that, because my cousin, she used to volunteer at the, is it the SPCA? Yeah, the SPCA. And she used to foster animals and stuff like that while she was in the military, while she was in the Navy. And she just retired last week too. And she has a job at the SPCA, and she's like happy as can be,
Aw,
because that's her
that's her
passion.
passion. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
You're right. Like, if it wasn't for this door opening, entrepreneurship door opening, like, I really think I would be in a totally different place than I am right now. And I started that entrepreneurship, almost 4 years ago now, like 3.5 years ago now. And opening that door to myself literally, like, changed who I was, changed my mindset, opened me to professional development. Just like, it just changed so much stuff for me. And that's why it's continued to open doors, like 4 years ago, heck, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought about doing a podcast. And here we are, so, like, I feel like the right doors open to you at the right time. Like, I literally joined my company, my entrepreneurship side hustle company, without even trying a product. I was like, hey, I'm all in, so that risk, that just all in attitude, like, really opened some big doors for me. And I can only say I'm super grateful for that. And so, if you are in the military, or you are in a job that you are, even if it's a 9 to 5, and you want to give that job up in the future, start a side hustle, start an entrepreneurship, start something you're passionate about, or you can be passionate about, or start looking for that passion now. Because you can't just quit and not have a plan. Well, you can, but we don't recommend it.
Right.
But, because not everybody's going to have that opportunity that you did. Like, that door just opened for you that day.
Right.
Doors just open, some doors are just open for me because I think, one, you're ready to receive it. Like we talked about before, like, if you're open to those opportunities, where so many people aren't open, they're just still in that mindset where, like, this is it for me. This is my life. Think good things don't happen to me. So, start looking for your passions before your next step.
Mm-hmm.
I say always have a plan B. This is kind of a plan B. Like, if you want to quit your job, you want to quit your 9 to 5, you want to get out of the military or retire, like, what's next for you? Right. Like, what is your plan B?
And it's funny, because you said a certain word. You said, you might have to take risk. And, we mentioned her earlier on in the beginning. And, Joanne Gaines, in one of her magazines, she talks about risk, and the whole, edition is about risk and growing. In order to grow, you have to take risk. In order to move forward, sometimes there's risk. I mean, you think about risk in relationships, risk in, taking a new job, risk, and you have to take those risks to see what's on the other side sometimes. And as you said earlier, some of the best memories are still ahead of us. So
absolutely. And that should be motivation in itself, to know that your best days haven't even come yet. Your best memories haven't even come yet. So
yeah.
So in closing, I want to thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us on our next podcast as we talk about limiting beliefs and those beliefs that are holding you back in life. And as always, you can look for our blogs on topics that we've already discussed. You can find Barbara's at www.isparkleglitter.com, and you can find mine at www.fearlesslyfreckles.com.